Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin joins us right now. And Joel, we've been talking about this war for months now. Thousands of troops have lost their lives, and it could get worse as it gets colder. But there are reports of a possible talk with Putin. So what do you know about this, and could we finally see a mutual agreement?
Yeah, Marcel, it's great to be with you, and you're right. The war is so devastating to Ukraine and to its civilian population, and of course, thousands of troops have been killed. And now with the winter coming on, it's only going to get more difficult for the Ukrainian people because Vladimir Putin is destroying their energy infrastructure, taking away Ukrainians' ability to have heat and electricity. It's a constant struggle. So with that as backdrop, President Biden yesterday, he did speak to the idea of potential diplomacy with Vladimir Putin. He did this alongside French President Emmanuel Macron. Now, Macron has always been speaking with Putin throughout this crisis. I think that President Biden, he made a good move by saying that he'd be willing to talk if the allies support it and if Ukraine supports it, anything to stop this war. But really, at the core of it, Russia needs to stop its invasion of Ukraine and end this war, really to ensure that that there is peace in Ukraine. If diplomacy can help us get there, the president clearly thinks that's an avenue to pursue.
Yeah, let's focus on that invasion right now. The reality is that 1/5 of Ukraine's territory is still occupied by Russian forces. So what challenges could come in the next coming weeks with or without this talk?
I mean, what you're pointing out here is that Russia, it controls a significant chunk of territory. It has been losing territory on the battlefield in recent months. And so it does give Ukraine some heart that they have Russia on the defense. And that means that Russia might be looking for a way out. But in the near term, Russia's chosen to attack civilians. It's chosen to, again, as we talked about, take away heat and electricity of Ukrainians in the dead of winter. It's choosing to destroy civilian infrastructure, which means that here, for example, in the United States, we're talking about funding the Ukrainian government to help rebuild that infrastructure in this upcoming bill that's sitting in Congress of about $37 billion in requested aid for Ukraine. So more challenges on the civilian safety, protection, and reconstruction side than anything, as the fighting will tend to bog down in the coldest of winter and in that part of the region.
Yeah, and while this war goes on, another war on human rights is taking place out in Iran. We saw a powerful move from Iranian soccer players during the World Cup. What do we know about the regime's power right now?
Well, first and foremost, we know that the Iranian people are speaking up in a way that they probably never have since the revolution in 1979. It's widespread national protest for women's rights and human rights in the country that's been repressed for over 4 decades. So more power to the Iranian women in particular and the young people who are leading this. The regime, though, I have to say, we need to be clear about this, has not deployed its harshest power to repress so far. And that's very concerning because it's always in the background that it could become much more repressive. And so that's really why what we're doing right now and what the global community is doing to identify, name, and shame the Iranian leadership, sanction them, and keep them on the defense to prevent them from taking those most drastic, harsh, repressive steps that they have the capacity to do. So the protests are ongoing. The government is holding back to a certain extent. It certainly feels rocked. And right now, there's a real struggle inside of Iran and inside of its leadership to think about how to calm this down and potentially avoid major bloodshed. But the Iranian people aren't just going home. They do want change. They do want openness. They do want, many of these women do want to take off the hijab and not be punished and potentially killed for it.
Joel, final thoughts. Where's the U.S. on its nuclear deal with Iran, and why do we need it?
Yeah, this is so complicated because if you don't like Iran now, you'll really dislike them if they get the nuclear bomb. Iran's regime doesn't have a nuclear weapon. It does have nuclear capabilities, and it is amassing enough fissile material to make bombs, but they have not yet made that decision to go for a bomb, so there's still time. And we've seen historically that the only times we can verifiably ensure and see that Iran has not built its nuclear program up is when we have a nuclear agreement with them. And right now we don't. And diplomacy is extraordinarily difficult to do with a government like Iran that is repressive, but this is the path. And there are no real good alternatives to preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Some have argued that we should bomb Iran. That's a disaster in the making with that kind of recommendation, nor is it it is no guarantee that there even would be the ability to stop a nuclear weapon through military action. So this is what we're looking at. But right now, in the near term, diplomacy does not seem to have a lot of window because the Iranian government itself has turned its back on diplomacy. But it's important to keep that as an outlet, as a potential way to resolve the nuclear issue, because we cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. That would be a real gift to the regime.
An ongoing conversation. Joel Rubin, thank you so much for your time and your expertise here on our show. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Marcel.